The messages arrived one after another, like gunshots to Elaine Montgomery's heart. 3 little bubbles on her husband's phone, carelessly left on the bathroom counter while he showered. She hadn't meant to look. 22 years of marriage had built a foundation of trust that made snooping feel unnecessary. But Victor had been distant lately, working late, distracted when he was home. And then the notification had flashed. A name she didn't recognize. Catherine. Can't wait for Friday. Just us in that beautiful country house you described. Elaine's fingers trembled as she scrolled up, each message confirming what her intuition had been whispering for weeks. Her husband was having an affair. She set the phone down exactly where she'd found it, walked to their bedroom, and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. The shower continued to run in the background, Victor humming some cheerful tune, oblivious that his world was about to implode. When he stepped out of the bathroom with a towel around his waist, Elaine had composed herself enough to smile and ask about dinner plans. She wasn't ready to confront him yet, not until she understood the full scope of his betrayal. The next morning, Elaine called in sick to the hospital for the first time in 3 years. As a night shift nurse, she prided herself on her dependability. Her supervisor had sounded concerned, unused to Elaine ever missing a shift. But today, she needed time to think, to plan. After Victor left for work, wearing his expensive suit and carrying the leather briefcase she'd given him for their 20th anniversary, Elaine began her investigation. His email was password protected, but their shared cloud account wasn't. Photos he'd deleted from his phone still lingered there, pictures of a young woman with honey blonde hair and a smile that seemed crafted specifically to make 51-year-old men feel special again. But what cut deepest were the images of Victor and this woman, Catherine, together at restaurants Elaine had never been to, places he claimed were too trendy when she suggested them. There they sat, his hand possessively on hers, looking at each other with the kind of hunger that had long disappeared from their marriage. The final evidence came when she checked their joint credit card statements. Expensive dinners, jewelry from a boutique downtown that Elaine recognized immediately. The same store where Victor claimed he'd purchased the bracelet he'd given her for Christmas. She now realized she'd received the cheaper version of what had actually been bought that day. And then she saw it, the confirmation email for this coming weekend. Victor had booked their country house, the peaceful retreat they'd purchased 5 years ago in the mountains, for Friday through Sunday. The email included special instructions for champagne and flowers to be delivered. The note attached read, "For a special weekend with my love." When her phone rang, Elaine barely registered the sound. It took 3 rings before she snapped back to reality. It was Stephanie, her best friend and fellow night shift nurse. They'd worked side by side for 15 years, sharing the quiet victories and heartbreaking losses that came with their profession. If there was anyone who would understand, it was Stephanie. "Hey, Martha said you called in sick. Are you okay? You never miss work." Stephanie's voice was already laced with concern. "Can you come over? I need to talk to someone," Elaine managed to say, her voice sounding foreign to her own ears. 30 minutes later, they sat at Elaine's kitchen island, a pot of untouched tea between them. Elaine had shown Stephanie everything: the messages, the photos, the receipts, the reservation. Her friend's expression had shifted from shock to fury. "That absolute bastard," Stephanie whispered, reaching for Elaine's hand. 22 years? And this is how he repays you? Taking some young thing to your country house? "I don't know what to do," Elaine admitted, tears finally breaking through her numb shock. "I was going to wait until Friday morning, before he leaves, and tell him I know everything, that it's over." Stephanie squeezed her hand, then shook her head. "No, that's not enough. He thinks he can just replace you with some younger model? Just walk away from everything you've built together? No, Elaine. He deserves something more. Memorable." Elaine wiped at her tears. "What do you mean?" A slow, calculating smile spread across Stephanie's face. "Remember what you told me about Victor's irrational fear? The one thing that terrifies him beyond anything else? Elaine blinked, then understanding dawned. Clowns. He's had a phobia since childhood. Something about getting lost at a carnival when he was 6. His parents found him crying, surrounded by clowns trying to cheer him up. Exactly, Stephanie said, a gleam in her eye. And doesn't Garrett still have that professional clown costume from the hospital charity event last Halloween? The one for the children's ward? What are you suggesting? Elaine asked, although part of her already knew, and to her surprise, found the idea darkly appealing. Let's give Victor and his little girlfriend a night they'll never forget, Stephanie said. You said the country house is isolated, right? No close neighbors? Elaine nodded slowly. It's on 5 acres, surrounded by woods. The nearest neighbor is half a mile away. Perfect. Stephanie leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Here's what we do. We drive up there Thursday, before they arrive. We install some hidden cameras. Garrett has those infrared ones from when they had that raccoon problem at their lake house. Then Friday night, when they're getting cozy, we cut the power. And Garrett appears at the windows, full clown makeup, just watching. For the first time since discovering the messages, Elaine felt something other than devastation. A small bubble of vindictive pleasure rose in her chest. That's insane, she said, but she was already picturing Victor's face contorted in terror. Sometimes insane is exactly what's called for, Stephanie replied. Think about it. He betrayed you, lied to your face for who knows how long, and now he's taking her to your special place. Don't you want him to remember this weekend for a very different reason? Elaine hesitated. I don't want to ask Garrett to go through all that trouble. Trust me, when I tell Garrett what Victor did, he'll volunteer. The men have golfed together for years. Garrett thought Victor was his friend. He'll be just as disgusted as I am. Later that evening, when Victor called to say he'd be working late again, the lie rolled so easily off his tongue that Elaine felt another piece of her heart crack. But this time, instead of breaking down after hanging up, he texted Stephanie. I'm in. Let's do it. The next day, Stephanie arrived with Garrett, his truck loaded with equipment. They spread everything on the kitchen table. Small cameras with night vision capability, a remote for the electrical panel that could be triggered from a distance, and, most importantly, the clown costume and makeup kit. Garrett, are you sure about this? Elaine asked, looking at the cheerful man who had always been so kind to her. He nodded grimly. Victor crossed a line, Elaine. Men like that think they can have it all. The respectable wife at home, the exciting young girlfriend on the side. Someone needs to show him there are consequences. Thursday morning, they drove the 2 hours to the country house. The place felt tainted now, knowing what Victor had planned. This peaceful retreat where she and Victor had spent countless weekends talking about retiring there someday had become the stage for his infidelity. They worked methodically, installing cameras in the living room, kitchen, master bedroom, and outside by the front door. They tested the remote for the electrical panel, confirming they could shut off power from the perimeter of the property. Garrett walked the grounds, identifying the best places to appear as the terrifying clown, where the windows would offer maximum visibility but minimal escape routes. As evening approached, they did one final check of the equipment. The cameras were feeding to Stephanie's laptop, crystal clear even in night vision mode. The microphones picked up every sound. The trap was set. Tomorrow, you'll be at my house, Stephanie reminded Elaine. We'll watch everything live. Garrett will drive up separately and stay hidden until they arrive. And then, the show begins. That night, lying next to her sleeping husband for what she knew would be one of the last times, Elaine felt strangely calm. Tomorrow, everything would change. Victor's carefully constructed double life would crumble. And while the thought brought her pain, there was also a sense of justice, of reclaiming some control in a situation where she had been made powerless. Enjoy your country getaway, darling, she thought, watching his peaceful, lying face in the darkness. It's going to be quite memorable. Friday arrived with an unseasonable warmth that matched the burning in Elaine's chest. The morning routine unfolded like a well-rehearsed play. Victor sipping his coffee at the breakfast nook while reviewing emails on his phone. Elaine preparing toast she couldn't stomach eating. The normalcy was surreal, knowing what lay ahead. "So, I was thinking," Victor said, not looking up from his phone, "I might go camping with some clients this weekend. Team-building thing, very last minute. The Henderson account, you remember them?" Elaine's hand stilled momentarily as she spread butter on her toast. The lies fell from his lips so effortlessly now. She wondered how long he'd been perfecting this skill. "Oh, that's a shame. I was hoping we might go to the country house," she replied, injecting just the right amount of disappointed wife into her voice. Victor glanced up, a flicker of panic crossing his features before settling into practiced concern. "I'm sorry, honey. You know how important this client is. We can go next weekend. Just us. Just us." The same words Catherine had used in her message. "Of course," Elaine smiled. "Business comes first. I understand." After Victor left for work, Elaine packed an overnight bag and texted Stephanie. "He's gone. Told me he's going camping with clients." The reply came immediately. "Camping. That's rich. Garrett's already on his way to the house. He'll stay in the woods until showtime." By 2 o'clock, Elaine was settled in Stephanie's comfortable living room. The laptop was open on the coffee table, split screen showing the various camera feeds from the country house. All quiet for now, the rooms waiting like a stage before a performance. "You doing okay?" Stephanie asked, setting down 2 mugs of tea and joining her on the couch. "I don't know what I'm feeling," Elaine admitted. 22 years, Steph. We built a life together. I thought we were happy." Stephanie's expression softened. "Men like Victor, they don't cheat because something's wrong with you or even with the marriage. They do it because something's wrong with them. They hit middle age and panic, thinking youth is slipping away. So they grab onto someone young who makes them feel important again." "She's nearly 20 years younger than him," Elaine said quietly. "And what do you want to bet she sees him as a successful older man who can give her things? Not as the real Victor, the one who sleeps in ratty t-shirts and has that weird laugh when he watches comedy shows. Not the man who's terrified of clowns." This pulled a small smile from Elaine. "He once made us leave a restaurant because they had a painting with a circus theme." "Exactly. She's getting his performance, not his reality. Tonight, though?" Stephanie picked up her tea with a satisfied expression. "Tonight, she gets a glimpse of the real man she's hooking her wagon to." At 4:30, Victor's luxury SUV appeared on the driveway camera. He emerged wearing casual clothes, expensive casual, the kind carefully selected to look effortless. He carried grocery bags and what looked like a bottle of champagne, making himself at home, preparing for his romantic weekend. Elaine felt physically ill watching him unlock the door to their retreat, whistling as he stepped inside. The house she had decorated, choosing every piece of furniture, every paint color. Their sanctuary, now defiled. Her phone buzzed with a text from Garrett. "He's here. No sign of the other party yet. I'm in position about 200 yards into the trees. Can see the house clearly." An hour later, a ride-share car pulled up. Out stepped Catherine, looking like she'd stepped from the pages of a fashion magazine. Flowing sundress, designer sunglasses, hair perfectly styled. Victor appeared at the door immediately, his face transformed with an eagerness Elaine hadn't seen in years. They embraced on the porch, a lingering kiss that made Stephanie curse under her breath. Elaine just watched, strangely detached, as if observing strangers in a film. Inside, Victor gave Catherine a tour of the house, his hand constantly finding excuses to touch the small of her back, her shoulder, her hair. "And this is the master bedroom," his voice came clearly through the cameras. "Best view in the house, especially at sunrise." "It's beautiful," Catherine cooed, turning to wrap her arms around his neck. "Just like you promised. So peaceful and private. Just us, all weekend," Victor murmured, leaning down to kiss her again. "No interruptions, no distractions. Stephanie reached over and squeezed Elaine's hand. "You okay?" Elaine nodded stiffly. "Let's keep watching." The couple moved to the kitchen, where Victor opened the champagne. They prepared dinner together, an intimacy that was somehow worse than the kisses. Victor chopping vegetables while Catherine seasoned the chicken, moving around each other with the synchronicity of lovers who had done this many times before. "Look at him playing house," Stephanie muttered. "Bet he never helps you cook." "Not in years," Elaine confirmed. The last time Victor had cooked with her had been for their 15th anniversary. He'd made a big show of it then, as if helping in the kitchen was a special occasion, not something a husband might regularly do. As the evening deepened, Elaine texted Garrett, "They're eating dinner now. Operation starts in 30 minutes. His reply was immediate. "Ready when you are." Makeup and costume on. Phone on silent. They watched as Victor and Catherine finished their meal, moving to the living room with fresh glasses of champagne. The conversation turned more intimate, Victor boasting about a recent business deal, Catherine looking impressed at all the right moments. "He's actually bragging about the Henderson account," Elaine noted with bitter amusement. "The same one he supposedly went camping with. What a piece of work." Stephanie shook her head. At 8:30 precisely, Stephanie sent the signal to Garrett. Moments later, they watched through the cameras as the lights in the country house abruptly went out. The night vision kicked in, showing Victor and Catherine looking around in confusion. "Power outage?" Catherine's voice came through clearly. "Must be." Victor stood. "Don't worry. Happens sometimes out here. I'll check the breaker box. There should be a flashlight in the kitchen drawer." They watched as Victor fumbled his way to the kitchen, retrieved a flashlight, and returned to Catherine. "I'll just go outside and check the panel. Wait here." "Be careful," she called as he headed for the front door. The exterior camera showed Victor stepping onto the porch, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness as he moved toward the side of the house where the electrical panel was located. And then, right on cue, Garrett stepped into view. In full clown makeup, with a wig of wild orange hair, oversized shoes, and a costume that glowed eerily in the night vision camera. He positioned himself directly in the path of Victor's flashlight beam. Victor froze. The flashlight illuminated the clown, standing perfectly still, smiling that exaggerated painted smile. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, Victor screamed. Not a manly shout of surprise, but a high-pitched, primal sound of absolute terror. He stumbled backward, dropping the flashlight, which rolled to illuminate the clown from below, making the figure even more menacing. "Oh my God," Stephanie whispered, a hand covering her mouth. On the screen, Victor scrambled back to the house, practically falling through the front door, slamming it shut behind him. "What happened?" they heard Catherine ask, alarm evident in her voice. "There's someone out there." Victor's voice was thin, breathless with panic. "A key clown." "There's a clown out there." "A what?" Catherine sounded confused. "A clown? Are you serious?" "I'm telling you, there's a fucking clown standing in our yard." Catherine's laughter filtered through the speakers. "Victor, come on. Why would there be a clown out here in the middle of nowhere? You're pranking me, right?" "I'm not." His voice had taken on a desperate edge. "I swear to God there's a clown out there." As if on cue, Garrett appeared at the living room window, pressing his made-up face against the glass, the white makeup ghostly in the darkness, the red smile distorted and menacing. Both Victor and Catherine screamed this time. "See? See?" Victor was backing away from the window, pulling Catherine with him. "I told you!" Catherine moved closer to the window, peering out cautiously. "Who is that? Is this some kind of joke?" The clown had disappeared from view again. "We need to call the police," Victor was saying, his voice shaking. "Where's my phone? Where did I put my phone?" "It's probably just some local kids playing a prank," Catherine reasoned, though she stayed well away from the windows now. They saw the lights and decided to scare the city folk. "No, no, no!" Victor was pacing now, his movements jerky and panicked. "You don't understand. This isn't. I can't. We need to get out of here." "Victor, calm down," It's just someone in a costume." "You don't understand," he repeated, his voice rising in pitch. "I can't—" "Not clowns. I can't handle clowns." Catherine stared at him. "Are you serious right now? You're afraid of clowns? Like, actually phobic?" Before Victor could answer, Garrett appeared at another window, this time standing perfectly still, just watching. Victor made a strangled sound and backed against the far wall, as far from the windows as possible. In Stephanie's living room, Elaine watched the scene unfold with an odd mixture of vindication and pity. The man cowering against the wall was so different from the confident, charming Victor who had seduced a woman nearly 20 years his junior. Here was the real Victor, vulnerable, fearful, human. "I think we've made our point," she said quietly. "Tell Garrett he can go home now." Stephanie looked at her in surprise. "Are you kidding? We're just getting started. Look at him, the big-shot businessman reduced to a quivering mess. Don't you want her to see what she's really getting?" Elaine hesitated, watching Victor's genuine terror. Then her gaze shifted to Catherine, who was looking at Victor with a mixture of concern and something else. Disappointment? Disillusionment? "You're right," Elaine decided. "Let's see this through." On the screen, Catherine was trying to comfort Victor while simultaneously peering out the windows. "I don't see anyone now. Maybe they left." The clown appeared at yet another window, tapping gently on the glass with one white-gloved finger. And that's when it happened. Victor, his face contorted in absolute terror, began to wet himself. A dark stain spread across the front of his expensive jeans as he stood frozen against the wall. "Oh my God!" Catherine's voice was thick with disgust. "Victor, did you just pee yourself?" In Stephanie's living room, both women stared at the screen in shocked silence. Then Stephanie burst into uncontrollable laughter. "Oh my God, Elaine! He actually peed his pants. This is better than I could have imagined." Elaine found herself laughing too, the sound strange and unfamiliar after days of tears. On screen, Victor Montgomery, successful businessman and unfaithful husband, stood with wet pants and a face drained of all color, utterly humiliated in front of his young mistress. "Tell Garrett to keep going," she said, wiping tears of laughter from her eyes. "I want to see how much more the man of the house can take." The night stretched on like a fever dream, reality bending into something surreal, as Elaine and Stephanie watched the scene unfold through the clinical eye of the cameras. Victor remained pressed against the wall, the dark stain on his pants impossible to hide in the beam of the flashlight Catherine now held. "I can't believe you just wet yourself," Catherine repeated, her voice pitched somewhere between concern and revulsion. "Victor, you're a grown man. You don't understand." Victor's voice was barely audible, a trembling whisper. "I've had this fear since I was a child. It's not something I can control." "Well, we need to do something." Catherine moved toward the window cautiously, peering out into the darkness. "I don't see anyone now." On Stephanie's laptop, they could see Garrett had strategically withdrawn into the shadows, waiting. Elaine's phone buzzed with a text from him. "How's our audience enjoying the show?" She typed back. He wet himself. "She's disgusted. Keep going." "Does this place have a landline?" Catherine was asking, turning back to Victor. "I can't get any cell service out here." "No." Victor shook his head, still unwilling to move from his spot against the wall. "No landline. The cell service is spotty, but it usually works on the east side of the house, by the kitchen window." Catherine moved toward the kitchen, her flashlight beam bouncing through the darkness. The camera picked her up as she approached the window, holding her phone up, searching for signal. That's when Garrett made his next appearance, rising slowly into view directly outside the kitchen window, his painted face filling the frame, red smile stretching impossibly wide. Catherine screamed, dropping both her phone and the flashlight. The camera's night vision showed her scrambling backward, tripping over a kitchen chair, and falling hard to the floor. "What? What is it?" Victor called from the living room, too terrified to move from his safe corner. "He's here, At the kitchen window! Catherine scrambled to her feet, abandoning her phone, and ran back to the living room. You're right. He's real. And he's watching us. In Stephanie's living room, the two women exchanged looks of grim satisfaction. She's starting to get it now, Stephanie murmured. The big, strong man she thought she was getting isn't so big and strong after all. On screen, Catherine had reached Victor, clutching at his arm. We need to get out of here. Let's just go to the car and drive back to town. Victor shook his head violently. We can't go outside. He's out there. So what are we supposed to do? Just stay in here in the dark all night? The power might come back on, Victor offered weakly. Elaine couldn't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction at the frustration evident in Catherine's voice. The romantic weekend was unraveling spectacularly. Back on screen, Catherine was pacing, her initial fear giving way to irritation. This is ridiculous. It's probably just some local weirdo trying to scare us. I'm going to go out there and tell him to get lost. No! Victor grabbed her arm, panic evident in his voice. You can't go out there. Watch me. Catherine pulled away, heading for the front door with determined steps. Ooh, she's got some nerve, Stephanie commented, sitting forward. Garrett's gonna love this. Elaine quickly texted Garrett. She's coming outside to confront you. Make it good. On the exterior camera, they watched as the front door opened cautiously, and Catherine stepped onto the porch, squinting into the darkness. Hello, she called out, her voice carrying in the night air. Whoever you are, this isn't funny. You're trespassing on private property, and I'm calling the police. Silence answered her. Garrett was nowhere to be seen in the camera frame. Catherine took a few more steps forward, gaining confidence. I mean it. Get out of here now, or you'll be sorry. Still nothing. She moved further into the yard, hands on her hips, turning in a full circle as she scanned the darkness. Where did he go? Stephanie wondered aloud. As if in answer, Garrett's white-painted face suddenly appeared directly behind Catherine, silent and ominous. In Stephanie's living room, both women gasped. The effect was genuinely terrifying, even knowing it was just Garrett. Catherine must have sensed something because she stiffened, then slowly turned around. The camera captured her expression of pure shock as she came face to face with the clown. To her credit, she didn't scream this time. Instead, after a moment of frozen terror, she swallowed hard and said, Who are you? What do you want? Garrett remained silent, simply staring at her with that fixed, painted smile. Then, slowly, he raised one gloved hand and pointed back toward the house, toward Victor. A chill ran down Elaine's spine. They hadn't planned that specific gesture, but Garrett's improvisation was perfect, mysterious, and vaguely threatening. Catherine backed away, then turned and ran back to the house, slamming and locking the door behind her. He's still out there, she told Victor, her earlier bravado evaporating. He didn't say anything. He just pointed at the house. At you. Victor's face, already pale with fear, went ashen. At me? What do you mean he pointed at me? I don't know. Catherine was pacing again. But it was creepy as hell. Like he knows you or something. Victor slumped down onto the couch, his wet pants forgotten in this new wave of terror. Oh God, this can't be happening. This can't be real. Do you know who it could be? Catherine demanded. Some enemy from work? A disgruntled client? Someone with a sick sense of humor? I don't know, Victor moaned, head in his hands. I can't think straight. Not with that thing out there. The night dragged on, the couple trapped in the dark house, jumping at every small sound. Garrett continued his psychological warfare, appearing occasionally at different windows, always silent, always watching. Sometimes he would just stand there for minutes at a time, staring in at them. Other times he would tap gently on the glass with one gloved finger, the sound cutting through the silence like a knife. Around midnight, Elaine texted Garrett. Time for the finale. Go to the master bedroom window. In Stephanie's living room, They watched as Victor and Catherine, exhausted and on edge, finally decided to try to get some sleep. They moved to the master bedroom, closing the door as if that would provide some protection. "I can't believe this is happening," Catherine said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "This was supposed to be a romantic weekend, not a horror movie." Victor didn't respond. He had changed out of his wet pants into a pair of sweatpants, but his humiliation lingered. The confident, charming man who had greeted Catherine hours earlier had been replaced by someone diminished, broken by fear. "Maybe he'll be gone in the morning," Catherine offered, trying to sound hopeful. "We can leave first thing, head back to the city." "Maybe," Victor mumbled, not sounding convinced. They settled into bed, Victor clutching the flashlight like a lifeline. For a while, nothing happened, and they began to relax slightly, exhaustion taking over. Then, the beam of the flashlight caught movement at the window. A white face, orange hair, that terrible painted smile slowly rising into view. Victor screamed, a sound so primal and terrified that it barely seemed human. He scrambled backward, falling off the bed in his panic, the flashlight spinning away across the floor. "He's here!" he shrieked. "At the window! He found us!" Catherine, startled awake by his screams, fumbled for the flashlight. When she pointed it at the window, there was nothing there. "Victor, there's nothing there," she said, her voice strained. "You were dreaming." "No, I saw him. He was right there." Victor was practically sobbing now, curled into a ball on the floor. Catherine moved cautiously to the window, peering out. "There's no one!" The clown's face slammed against the glass suddenly, centimeters from hers, eyes wide and manic. Catherine screamed and fell backward. On the floor, Victor began to hyperventilate, gasping for air between sobs of terror. "Victor!" Catherine crawled to him, genuine concern breaking through her fear. "Victor, breathe! You're having a panic attack!" But Victor couldn't breathe. His face was turning red, then an alarming shade of purple as he struggled for air. In Stephanie's living room, Elaine sat up straight, alarm cutting through her satisfaction. "He's actually having a panic attack. This is going too far." She grabbed her phone and texted Garrett, "Stop! Victor's having a panic attack. It's gone too far." On screen, Catherine was desperately trying to help Victor breathe, coaching him through exaggerated inhalations and exhalations. In through the nose, out through the mouth. "Come on, Victor, stay with me." Slowly, painfully, Victor's breathing began to regulate. Color returned to his face as the panic attack subsided, leaving him drained and shaking. "I'm sorry," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry you had to see me like this." Catherine stroked his hair, her earlier disgust replaced by something like pity. "It's okay. It's going to be okay. We'll get through this." The tenderness of the moment was unexpectedly affecting. Elaine found herself looking away from the screen, a complicated mix of emotions churning inside her. This wasn't how she had imagined the night unfolding. "Elaine?" Stephanie's voice was gentle. "You okay?" "I don't know," Elaine admitted. "Seeing him like this, I still hate what he did, but he's still the man you spent 22 years with," Stephanie finished for her. "It's complicated." Elaine nodded. "I wanted him to suffer, but not like this. Not a full-blown panic attack." On screen, Victor and Catherine had moved back to the bed. She held him as his breathing continued to normalize, whispering reassurances. The intimacy of the moment felt intrusive to watch. "Tell Garrett to head home," Elaine decided. "They've had enough." Stephanie looked surprised. "Are you sure? After what Victor did to you?" "Yes," Elaine said firmly. "This has gone far enough." But before she could text Garrett, there was a sudden commotion on screen. Victor had gone rigid in Catherine's arms. "What is it?" Catherine asked, alarmed. "Victor, what's wrong?" "He's still there," Victor whispered, eyes fixed on the window. Standing there, watching. The camera showed Garrett at the window again, perfectly still, just staring in at them with that fixed smile. Despite knowing it was just Stephanie's husband in makeup, Elaine had to admit the effect was genuinely disturbing. What happened next took everyone by surprise. Victor's eyes rolled back and he slumped over, unconscious. "Victor?" Catherine shook him. "Victor, wake up!" When he didn't respond, panic entered her voice. "Victor!" In Stephanie's living room, Elaine was already on her feet. "He's fainted! This has gone way too far! Tell Garrett to stop now!" Stephanie quickly texted her husband, fingers flying across the screen. "Stop now! Come home!" Victor passed out. On screen, Catherine was frantically trying to revive Victor, shaking him, patting his cheeks. "Victor, please wake up. Please!" After what felt like an eternity, Victor's eyes fluttered open. He looked dazed, confused. "What happened?" he mumbled. "You fainted," Catherine told him, relief evident in her voice. "You saw him, and you just collapsed." Victor struggled to sit up, humiliation written across his features. "I fainted? Like someone having a severe panic response," Catherine finished for him, kindness in her voice. "It's not your fault. Phobias are real, legitimate fears." But something had changed in Victor's expression. Beyond the fear, beyond the humiliation, there was a dawning realization. "This isn't random," he said slowly. "This is targeted. At me. Because of my fear of clowns." Catherine looked confused. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying very few people know about my clown phobia. It's not something I talk about. It's embarrassing." He ran a shaking hand through his hair. "Someone is doing this specifically to torture me." "But who would do that? And why?" Victor was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. "Elaine." The sound of her own name through the speakers sent a jolt through Elaine. "Elaine? Your wife?" Catherine looked even more confused. "Why would she do this?" Victor wouldn't meet her eyes. "Because she might know about us." Understanding dawned on Catherine's face, followed quickly by outrage. "Are you saying your wife found out about our affair and decided to terrorize us with a clown? That's insane." "You don't know Elaine," Victor muttered. "She's resourceful, and she has this friend, Stephanie, who would absolutely help her do something like this." In Stephanie's living room, the two women exchanged shocked glances. "How does he know?" Stephanie whispered. "He's guessing," Elaine replied, equally quiet, as if Victor might hear them through the screen. "But he's putting it together." On screen, Catherine was pacing again, agitation evident in every movement. "So, you're telling me your wife somehow found out about us, followed you here and hired some creep in a clown costume to terrorize us all night? Because of a phobia you have?" "It sounds crazy when you say it like that," Victor admitted. "It is crazy," Catherine exploded. "This whole situation is crazy. I'm stuck in a dark house in the middle of nowhere with a man who peed his pants and fainted because of a clown. And now you're telling me it might be your wife's revenge plot? What kind of nightmare did I walk into?" Victor flinched at her words. "I'm sorry. I never thought—" "No, you didn't think, did you?" Catherine cut him off. "You didn't think about consequences when you decided to cheat on your wife. You didn't think about what might happen if she found out. And you definitely didn't think about what kind of situation you were putting me in." The harshness of her words hung in the air between them. Victor looked utterly defeated, shoulders slumped, head bowed. "You're right," he said finally. "This is all my fault. I'm sorry I dragged you into this mess." The sincerity in his voice seemed to soften Catherine slightly. She sat down beside him on the bed, sighing heavily. "Look, let's just try to get through the night. In the morning, when it's light, we'll leave and figure everything out then. Okay?" Victor nodded mutely. In Stephanie's living room, Elaine sat back, a strange sense of emptiness replacing the earlier vindication. The revenge had worked, perhaps too well. Victor was broken, humiliated in front of his mistress. Catherine had seen him at his absolute worst, witnessed his deepest fears and weaknesses. The affair would likely end after tonight. So why didn't she feel better? "You okay?" Stephanie asked, noticing her expression. "I don't know," Elaine admitted. "Seeing him like this, I thought it would feel good, but it just feels sad. 22 years together, and this is what it comes to, terrorizing each other. Stephanie squeezed her hand. He brought this on himself, Elaine. Remember that. I know, and I'm still furious with him. But watching him fall apart like this, it's not what I expected to feel. On screen, Victor and Catherine had settled back into bed, both tense and watchful. But the clown no longer appeared at the windows. Garrett had received their message and withdrawn, his part in the night's drama complete. As the hours passed, exhaustion finally overcame fear. The couple fell into an uneasy sleep, Victor's hand clutching Catherine's as if she were a lifeline in his sea of terror. Elaine watched them sleep, 22 years of memories washing over her, the good and the bad, the love and the pain, all of it tangled together in a knot she wasn't sure could ever be unraveled. I think I need some sleep too, she said finally, turning away from the screen. Tomorrow's going to be interesting. Stephanie nodded, closing the laptop. Stay here tonight. Guest room's all made up. We can watch the grand finale in the morning when they try to leave. That night, lying in Stephanie's guest room, Elaine stared at the ceiling, replaying the events of the evening. The plan had worked perfectly. Victor had been thoroughly humiliated, his affair effectively derailed. She should feel triumphant, vindicated. Instead, as sleep finally claimed her, she found herself wondering if there had been another way, a path that didn't involve reducing the man she had once loved to a terrified, sobbing mess on the floor. But then, the image of Victor and Catherine together at their country house, in their bed, rose in her mind, and she hardened her heart again. He had made his choice. Now he would live with the consequences. Morning arrived with gentle inevitability, sunlight filtering through the blinds of Stephanie's guest room, where Elaine had spent a restless night. She awoke to the smell of coffee and the soft murmur of voices from the kitchen. For a blissful moment, she forgot everything. The betrayal, the revenge, the broken pieces of her marriage scattered around her like shrapnel. Then reality crashed back, and she closed her eyes against the sudden wave of pain. "You're up!" Stephanie appeared in the doorway, already dressed, holding 2 steaming mugs of coffee. She handed one to Elaine as she sat up in bed. "Garrett got home around 3 in the morning. Said everything went exactly as planned." "How is he?" Elaine asked, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "Oddly, he feels kind of bad about it," Stephanie admitted, sitting on the edge of the bed. Said watching a grown man that terrified was more disturbing than satisfying. But he also said Victor absolutely deserved it for what he did to you. Elaine nodded, taking a sip of the strong coffee. "Is he here?" "Garrett. In the kitchen, making breakfast. He wants to see how it all ends." Stephanie studied her friend's face. "How did you sleep?" "Barely at all," Elaine admitted. "Kept replaying everything in my mind, wondering if we went too far." "Second thoughts?" Stephanie raised an eyebrow. "Not about ending the marriage," Elaine clarified. "That's done, but maybe about how we did it. I didn't expect to feel complicated about seeing him that way." "Of course you feel complicated. You spent half your life with him." Stephanie's voice softened. "But remember why we did this. He betrayed you, Elaine, in the worst possible way. He was ready to throw away 22 years for a woman young enough to be his daughter, without even giving you the dignity of the truth." "I know," Elaine said quietly, "and I'm still furious, still hurt beyond words. But last night, seeing him completely fall apart." "Let's see what the morning brings," Stephanie suggested, standing up. "The final act is about to play out. Get dressed and come to the kitchen." Garrett made waffles. 15 minutes later, showered and dressed in borrowed clothes, Elaine joined Stephanie and Garrett in their bright, welcoming kitchen. The laptop was open on the table, split screen showing the various camera feeds from the country house. Sunlight streamed through the windows there, transforming the space from the scene of nighttime terror back into the peaceful retreat it was designed to be. "Morning," Garrett greeted her, sliding a plate of waffles in her direction. His kind face showed no sign of the menacing clown from the night before. "How are you holding up?" "I'm okay," Elaine said, not entirely truthfully. "Thank you for last night. I know it was a lot to ask." "Anything for you?" Garrett replied simply. Victor crossed a line. Lines have consequences. They ate in companionable silence, watching the screens for any sign of movement from the bedroom. It was nearly 9 o'clock before there was any stirring from the couple. Victor was the first to wake, sitting up cautiously, glancing immediately toward the window that had been the source of so much terror the night before. In the daylight, there was nothing to see but trees and blue sky. He exhaled visibly, then turned to wake Catherine. "Morning," they heard him say, his voice still rough from the previous night's screaming. "Power's still out, but at least it's light now." Catherine stirred, blinking up at him. For a moment, she seemed confused. Then memory returned and her expression hardened. "Is he gone?" "I think so." Victor moved cautiously to the window, peering out. "I don't see anyone." "Then, let's get out of here." Catherine was already getting up, gathering her things. "Right now." "Don't you want breakfast or—" "No," she cut him off sharply. "I want to leave. Now." Victor didn't argue, just nodded, and began collecting his own belongings. They moved through the house quickly, checking windows and doors as they went, as if expecting the clown to reappear at any moment. But the morning remained peaceful. The only sounds the rustle of wind through trees and distant birdsong. At Stephanie's kitchen table, the three watched in silence, finishing their waffles as the drama continued to unfold. "Look at her face," Stephanie commented, as the camera caught Catherine's expression. "She is so done with him." It was true. Catherine's face was a mask of barely contained impatience and disgust as she waited for Victor to load their bags into the SUV. Every time he flinched at a sound from the woods, her expression grew more contemptuous. Finally, they were in the car, Victor behind the wheel, Catherine in the passenger seat staring straight ahead. "Should we follow them?" Garrett asked. "See where they go?" Elaine shook her head. "The cameras caught everything we need to see. I know how this ends." The drive back to the city was captured in fragments by the exterior cameras until the SUV disappeared down the long driveway, taking Victor and his humiliation with it. The three sat in silence for a moment, the conclusion of their elaborate revenge plan leaving a strange void. "So what now?" Stephanie finally asked. Elaine took a deep breath. "Now I go home and wait for him. He'll be back around noon, I'm guessing. And then we have a conversation." "You want us to come with you?" Garrett offered. "For moral support?" "No," Elaine said firmly. "This part, I need to do myself." She left Stephanie and Garrett's house an hour later, after helping clean up breakfast and thanking them both again for their help. The drive home felt surreal, as if she were moving between worlds, the world of last night's revenge and the world of what came after. Her house looked exactly as she had left it the day before, unchanged despite the seismic shifts in her life. She moved through the rooms slowly, seeing everything with new eyes. The photographs of her and Victor on vacations, at family gatherings, smiling into the camera, as if they would be together forever. The furniture they had chosen together, the books on his nightstand, his coffee mug in the sink. 22 years of shared life surrounded her, both comforting and accusing. She had loved this man, built a life with him, trusted him with her heart, and he had betrayed that trust in the most fundamental way. She made herself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen island, waiting. Minutes stretched into an hour. She didn't check the cameras again. Whatever happened between Victor and Catherine on the drive home was their business now. Her focus was on what would happen when Victor walked through the door. At 12:30, she heard the sound of a key in the lock. The front door opened and closed softly. There was a pause, then footsteps moving tentatively through the house. "Elaine?" Victor's voice called out, unusually subdued. "In the kitchen," she replied, keeping her voice neutral. He appeared in the doorway, looking like he'd aged years overnight. His face was haggard, eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep, hair disheveled. He stood there awkwardly, as if unsure of his welcome in his own home. "You're back early," Elaine observed calmly, taking a sip of her tea. "How was camping?" Victor's gaze dropped to the floor. "Elaine, Yes?" She kept her voice light, almost conversational. "I need to tell you something," he finally said, moving into the kitchen but keeping his distance, as if afraid to get too close. "Oh? What's that?" He took a deep breath, visibly gathering his courage. "I haven't been honest with you. I wasn't camping last night. I went to our country house." "I see," Elaine said, watching his face carefully. "Alone?" The direct question seemed to throw him. He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. "No, I was with someone." "Someone," Elaine repeated flatly. "A colleague," Victor stammered. "From work. It wasn't what you think." "Wasn't it?" Elaine set down her mug with deliberate care. "What exactly do I think, Victor?" "Look, I made a terrible mistake," he blurted out. "It was stupid and thoughtless, and I regret it more than I can say. But nothing really happened. We just talked and had dinner, and then there was this power outage, and someone was there, outside the house, watching us." "Someone?" Elaine raised an eyebrow. "Who?" Victor swallowed hard. A clown. There was a clown there." "A clown," Elaine echoed, allowing a hint of disbelief to enter her voice. "At our country house, in the middle of the night. I know how it sounds." Victor ran a shaking hand through his hair. "But I swear to you, it happened. He was there all night, watching us through the windows. It was terrifying." Elaine mused, taking another sip of her tea. "That does sound frightening, especially with your phobia. How did your colleague handle that?" Victor looked away, shame coloring his features. "Not well. I wasn't at my best." "No? What happened?" "Elaine, please," he was almost begging now. "I know I messed up. I know what I did was wrong. But something very strange happened last night. And I think you might know something about it." Elaine set down her mug and looked him directly in the eye. "What exactly are you accusing me of, Victor?" "I'm not accusing," he backpedaled immediately. Very few people know about my fear of clowns. And the timing, right when I was there it seems like too much of a coincidence. So you think I somehow found out you were taking another woman to our country house and decided to send a clown to terrorize you?" Elaine kept her voice calm, almost amused. "That sounds a bit far-fetched, don't you think?" Victor looked confused, thrown off by her reaction. "When you put it like that, and how exactly would I have found out about your plans with this colleague? Did you tell me about them?" "No, but—" "So I would have had to, what, go through your phone? Follow you? Hire a private detective?" Elaine raised an eyebrow. "Do you really think I'm that kind of person, Victor? After 22 years of marriage, is that who you think I am?" "No," he mumbled, looking increasingly uncertain. "I don't know what to think anymore." "Well, I'll tell you what I think." Elaine stood up, bringing herself to eye level with him. "I think you've been lying to me for a long time. I think you've been seeing this colleague behind my back, sneaking around, betraying the vows we made to each other. And I think what happened last night was the universe giving you exactly what you deserved." Victor stared at her, the blood draining from his face. You do know." "Know what, Victor?" Elaine's voice was steel now, all pretense dropped. "That you've been sleeping with your young assistant? That you took her to our country house? To our bed? That you lied to my face about where you were going?" "Elaine, I can explain." "No need," she cut him off. "I already understand perfectly. And so does Catherine, I imagine. How did she react when you wet yourself in front of her? When you fainted from fear? Was she impressed by your masculinity then?" Victor's jaw dropped. You were watching?" "Every moment," Elaine confirmed coldly. "From you arriving with champagne to you leaving this morning with your tail between your legs. Quite the performance, Victor, though not your best work." The cameras, he whispered, realization dawning. You set up cameras? And the clown, Elaine added, a smile spreading across her face. Don't forget the clown. That was a nice touch, don't you think? Garrett made quite a convincing one. Garrett? Victor looked like he might be sick. Stephanie's husband? He was the clown? He volunteered for the role, actually, Elaine informed him. When Stephanie told him what you'd been up to, they were both quite eager to help. Victor sank into a chair, the full weight of his humiliation crashing down on him. So you all watched? Everything? Everything, Elaine confirmed. Your romantic dinner, your terror when the lights went out, your accident, your panic attack, your fainting spell, Catherine trying to comfort you, then growing increasingly disgusted. It was quite entertaining, actually. Better than any reality show. My God! Victor buried his face in his hands. I can't believe this. No? You can't believe that actions have consequences? Elaine's voice grew harder. You can't believe that betraying someone who loved you might result in them wanting to see you suffer? What exactly did you think was going to happen, Victor? That I would never find out? That I would just continue living in blissful ignorance while you built a new life with her? It wasn't like that, Victor protested weakly. It was just a mistake, a stupid midlife crisis thing. It didn't mean anything. It meant something to me, Elaine said, her voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. It meant the end of us, the end of 22 years together, the end of trust, of respect, of love. So don't sit there and tell me it didn't mean anything. Victor looked up at her, his eyes pleading. Elaine, please, I love you. What happened with Catherine was just physical. It wasn't real. You and I, we have history, a life together. We can work through this. Elaine laughed, a sound entirely devoid of humor. Work through this? After what you did? After what I saw? No, Victor. We're done. She ended it anyway, he tried desperately. Catherine, after last night, she said she wanted nothing more to do with me. Said she couldn't be with someone who reacted like that. Smart woman, Elaine observed coldly. Figured out in one night what took me 22 years to see? That you're a coward at heart, willing to cheat on your wife, but not brave enough to face the consequences. The words hit Victor like physical blows. He flinched, eyes dropping to the floor. What do you want from me, Elaine? What can I do to fix this? Nothing, she replied simply. There's nothing to fix. I've already spoken with a lawyer. The divorce papers will be ready tomorrow. I suggest you find somewhere else to stay until everything's finalized. A divorce? Victor looked genuinely shocked, as if the concept had never occurred to him. Elaine, that's extreme. We can get counseling. Take some time. No, she cut him off firmly. The time for that was before you started sleeping with your assistant, before you lied to me, before you betrayed everything we built together. Victor's shoulders slumped in defeat. When he spoke again, his voice was barely audible. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore, Elaine said, a strange sense of freedom washing over her as she spoke the words. Maybe your mother will take you in, though I'd advise her not to take you to any circuses. Eat. The reference to his phobia made Victor flinch again. You never used to be cruel, Elaine. And you never used to be a cheater, she countered. People change, Victor. Sometimes for the worse. A heavy silence fell between them, 22 years of shared history, collapsing into this single, irreparable moment. Victor looked around the kitchen, their kitchen, as if seeing it for the last time. Can I at least pack some clothes? He asked finally, defeat evident in every line of his body. Take what you need, Elaine nodded, but be gone by the time I get back. I'm going out. Where? The question slipped out before he could stop himself, a remnant of their shared life when such information was freely exchanged. Elaine gave him a long look. That's no longer your business, is it? She left him there, sitting at the kitchen island they had chosen together years ago, and walked out the front door without looking back. In her car, she allowed herself a moment of pure grief for what they had been, for what they could have been, for the future she had thought was certain. Then she wiped her eyes, started the engine, and drove toward the unknown road ahead. Behind her, the house grew smaller in the rear-view mirror, a physical manifestation of the life she was leaving behind. Her phone rang, Stephanie checking in. Elaine connected the call through the car's system. "How did it go?" her friend asked immediately. "About as expected," Elaine replied, keeping her eyes on the road. "He tried to lie at first, then confessed when I confronted him. Begged for another chance. I told him it's over." "Good for you." Stephanie's voice was fierce with loyalty. "Where are you headed now?" "I don't know," Elaine admitted, surprising herself with the truth of it. For the first time in decades, her path wasn't intertwined with Victor's. The freedom was both terrifying and exhilarating. Somewhere new. Somewhere I can breathe. "Come back here," Stephanie suggested. "Garrett's making his famous lasagna for dinner. We can open a bottle of wine, celebrate your independence." Elaine considered the offer. The thought of returning to her empty house, with its echoes of Victor and their shared past, held little appeal. "That sounds perfect," she decided. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. As she drove through the familiar streets of the city that had been her home for so long, Elaine felt something unexpected stirring in her chest. Not just grief or anger, but possibility. The future stretched before her, unwritten and unexplored. It wouldn't be the future she had planned, but perhaps it could be something else entirely. Something of her own making. Victor had made his choice. Now, she would make hers. 6 weeks had passed since Elaine had watched Victor walk out of their shared home for the last time. 6 weeks of adjustment, of grief, of unexpected moments of liberation. The divorce proceedings were well underway, their joint assets being untangled by lawyers with the clinical precision of surgeons separating conjoined twins. There was pain in the process, but also the promise of healing. Elaine had moved temporarily into Stephanie's guest house, a charming converted garage behind the main property. The arrangement gave her both companionship and privacy as she navigated the strange new geography of her life. Some days were harder than others. Decades of shared history didn't simply evaporate, no matter how justified the separation. There were moments when she found herself reaching for her phone to tell Victor about something that had happened during her shift, only to remember that he was no longer her person. But there were good days too, days when she felt lighter, unburdened by the weight of Victor's betrayal and her own suspicions. Days when she laughed freely with Stephanie over coffee, or found herself rediscovering interests she had set aside during her marriage. Today was one of those better days. Elaine stood in the kitchen of the guest house, arranging a cheese plate for the small gathering Stephanie had organized. Nothing formal, just a few friends coming over for wine and conversation. A celebration of sorts for the final divorce papers that had arrived that morning. 22 years of marriage officially concluded in a stack of legal documents with her signature on the final page. Her phone chimed with a text from Stephanie. Garrett picked up the wine. "Everyone will be here in about 30 minutes. Need anything from the main house?" Elaine smiled and texted back, "All good here. See you soon." She surveyed the spread she had prepared. Nothing elaborate, just good cheese, fresh bread, olives, and fruit. Simple pleasures that tasted of new beginnings. As she worked, her mind drifted back to the last time she had seen Victor. It had been at their lawyer's office 3 weeks ago, finalizing the division of their assets. He had looked diminished somehow, older, the confident set of his shoulders replaced by a defeated slump. He had tried to speak with her privately, but she had kept the conversation strictly business. Whatever emotional closure he sought would have to come from within himself, not from her. According to their mutual friends, those few who hadn't clearly aligned themselves with either camp in the wake of the divorce, Victor had moved into a downtown apartment and thrown himself into his work. The affair with Catherine was definitively over. She had transferred to another department and was reportedly dating someone closer to her own age. The clown incident had become something of a whispered legend around Victor's office, though no one knew the full story except those who had been directly involved. The sound of the doorbell pulled Elaine from her thoughts. Strange. No one should be arriving for at least another half hour. She wiped her hands on a kitchen towel and went to the door. When she opened it, she was stunned to find Victor standing on the threshold, looking uncomfortable in casual clothes she didn't recognize. For a moment, they just stared at each other, the months of separation stretching between them like a physical distance. "Victor," she finally said, her voice carefully neutral, "what are you doing here?" He shifted his weight nervously from one foot to the other. "I need to talk to you. It won't take long, I promise." Elaine hesitated. The last thing she wanted today, of all days, was a scene with her ex-husband. But there was something in his expression, a sincerity, a vulnerability, that gave her pause. "I'm having people over soon," she warned him. "I know. Stephanie mentioned it when I called asking for your address." He managed a small, self-deprecating smile. "Don't worry, I'll be gone before they arrive. I needed to say some things to you, face to face." Against her better judgment, Elaine stepped back, allowing him into the small guest house. Victor entered cautiously, looking around at the space she had made her own. His gaze lingered on a painting she had recently purchased, a vibrant abstract she would never have chosen during their marriage, knowing he preferred more traditional art. "It's nice," he offered awkwardly. "This place, it suits you." "Thank you," Elaine replied, crossing her arms. "What did you want to say, Victor?" "The papers are signed. It's done." Victor nodded, accepting the firmness in her tone. "I know. I'm not here to try to change that. He took a deep breath. "I needed to apologize, properly, for everything." Elaine raised an eyebrow but remained silent, waiting. "What I did to you was unforgivable," he continued, meeting her gaze directly for the first time. "The affair, the lies, taking her to our place. All of it. There's no excuse, no justification that makes any of it okay. And I need you to know that I understand that now." "Why now?" Elaine asked, genuinely curious. "It's been weeks, Victor. The divorce is final." He nodded again, accepting this. "I've been seeing a therapist, trying to understand why I did what I did. Why I was willing to throw away 22 years with an amazing woman for something that meant nothing. And what great insight did you gain?" Elaine couldn't keep the edge from her voice. "That I was afraid," Victor admitted quietly. "Afraid of getting older. Afraid of becoming irrelevant. Afraid that the best parts of my life were behind me. Catherine made me feel young again, desired, important, but it was all surface, no substance." "That's quite the revelation," Elaine said, not unkindly. "But why tell me? What does this change?" "Nothing," Victor acknowledged. "It doesn't change anything. But you deserve to hear it. To know that I recognize what I lost, what I threw away, that I understand it was entirely my fault, not yours." There was something different about him, Elaine realized, a humility that had never been part of his character before. Whether it was the therapy, or simply the consequences of his actions finally sinking in, he seemed to have gained some genuine self-awareness. "I appreciate that," she said finally, "and I hope the therapy helps you. I really do." Victor nodded, glancing around the room again. "You seem good, better than when I last saw you." "I am," Elaine confirmed. "Not every day, but overall, yes." "I'm glad," he said, and she believed him. "You deserve to be happy, Elaine. After everything, you deserve that more than anyone." An awkward silence fell between them, two people who had once shared everything now struggling to navigate a simple conversation. "There's something else," Victor said after a moment, reaching into his pocket. "I wanted to give you this." He held out a small velvet box. Elaine made no move to take it. "It's not what you think," he assured her quickly. "It's not jewelry or anything like that. Just, please." Cautiously, Elaine accepted the box. When she opened it, she was surprised to find a key inside. The key to their country house. "The property settlement gave me the house," Victor explained. "But I don't want it. Too many memories, both good and, well, that last night. I've signed it over to you. The papers are with your lawyer." Elaine stared at the key, caught off guard by the gesture. "Victor, you don't have to." "I want to," he interrupted. "You loved that place. You were the one who found it, who turned it into something special. It should be yours." She closed the box slowly, not quite sure what to say. "Thank you," she managed finally. "That's very generous." Victor shrugged, a ghost of his old smile crossing his face. "Least I could do after everything. Besides, I could never go back there without expecting to see a clown at every window." Despite herself, Elaine smiled at that. Garrett did make a convincing clown. Terrifying, Victor agreed, a shudder running through him at the memory. "I still have nightmares sometimes." "I'm sorry about that," Elaine said, surprising herself with her sincerity. The revenge felt right at the time, but looking back, it was extreme. "No," Victor shook his head. "I deserved it. All of it. And in a strange way, it was what I needed. Seeing myself like that, weak, pathetic, exposed, it forced me to take a hard look at who I've become." He hesitated, then added, "Catherine certainly did." "She left you because of that night?" Elaine asked, curiosity overcoming her reluctance to discuss the other woman. "She called me the next day," Victor confirmed. "Said she couldn't be with a man who fell apart like that, that seeing me so diminished had killed any attraction she felt. She actually thanked me for showing her my true colors before things went any further." "Ouch!" Elaine winced despite herself. The betrayal still hurt, but there was no satisfaction in hearing about Victor's humiliation now. Time had dulled the edges of her anger, leaving only a sad recognition of human frailty, his and her own. Victor nodded, accepting the assessment. "I had it coming. But you know what's strange? After the initial humiliation wore off, I felt relieved, like I could stop pretending to be someone I'm not. With Catherine, I was always performing, trying to be this sophisticated, confident man she saw me as. It was exhausting. And with me?" Elaine couldn't stop herself from asking. "With you, I was just me," Victor admitted quietly. "Until I wasn't. Until I started trying to be someone else. Someone I thought was more exciting, more successful. That was my mistake. You always saw me clearly, Elaine. The good and the bad. And you loved me anyway. I didn't appreciate what a gift that was." The front door of the main house opened, and they both turned to see Stephanie stepping out onto the porch. She spotted them through the guest house window and waved questioningly, clearly checking if Elaine needed rescuing. Elaine waved back reassuringly, then turned to Victor. "I think that's your cue. People will be arriving soon." "Of course," he nodded, moving toward the door. At the threshold, he paused, turning back to her. "For what it's worth, Elaine, I am truly sorry, not just for the affair, but for taking you for granted all those years, for not seeing what was right in front of me until it was gone." Elaine studied him for a long moment, this man who had been the center of her world for over 2 decades. There was genuine regret in his eyes, and something else, acceptance. He wasn't asking for forgiveness or reconciliation. He was simply offering the truth, finally. "Thank you for saying that," she said, "and thank you for the house. That means a lot. Take care of yourself, Elaine," Victor said, and then he was gone, walking across the yard to his car without looking back. Elaine watched him go, a complex mix of emotions washing over her. There was no desire to run after him, no longing for what they had lost, only a quiet acknowledgement that some chapter of her life had truly, finally closed. Stephanie appeared at her side, concern evident in her expression. "Everything okay?" "What did he want?" Elaine held up the small velvet box. "To give me the country house. And to apologize." "Wow." Stephanie looked surprised. "That's unexpected. Are you all right?" "I am." Elaine realized she meant it. "It was good, actually. Closure, I guess you'd call it." Stephanie squeezed her arm supportively. "Well, perfect timing then. Today's about new beginnings, right?" As they walked back to the main house together, Elaine felt a sense of peace settling over her. The anger that had fueled her through those first difficult weeks had largely dissipated, replaced by a growing certainty that she would be all right on her own. Better than all right. The gathering that evening was exactly what she needed. Warm, supportive friends, good food and wine, conversation that flowed easily from serious to silly, and back again. As Elaine looked around Stephanie's living room, at the faces of people who had stood by her through the darkest days of her life, she felt a profound gratitude. Late in the evening, after most guests had departed, and only Stephanie, Garrett, and a few close friends remained, the conversation turned to future plans. "So, what's next for you?" asked Martha, a fellow nurse from the hospital. "Any big plans now that it's official?" Elaine swirled the wine in her glass thoughtfully. "I'm thinking about taking some time off, actually, using some of my accumulated vacation days to go to the country house for a few weeks. Clean it out, make it mine again." "That sounds perfect," Stephanie approved. "A chance to reclaim that space." "And after that?" Martha pressed gently. Elaine smiled, surprising herself with the certainty she felt. "After that, I'm thinking about making some changes at work, applying for that educational coordinator position that's opening up. I've always loved teaching the new nurses." "You'd be amazing at that," Garrett contributed. "You've basically been doing it unofficially for years." "And maybe," Elaine continued, warming to the subject, "I'll finally take that photography course I've been talking about forever. Victor always said it was impractical, but—" She shrugged. "It's not his decision anymore, is it?" "To impractical decisions," Stephanie raised her glass in a toast, eyes twinkling. "To new beginnings," Elaine countered, raising her own glass to meet her friends. As the evening wound down, Elaine found herself standing on Stephanie's back porch, gazing up at the stars. The night was clear and cool, the future open before her in a way it hadn't been since she was young. There would still be difficult days ahead, she knew, moments of doubt and loneliness, but standing there under the vast night sky, Elaine felt something she hadn't expected to feel so soon after the divorce. Hope. Behind her, the door opened, and Stephanie stepped out, wrapping a cardigan around herself against the evening chill. "Penny, for your thoughts?" she asked, joining Elaine at the railing. "Just thinking about everything that's happened," Elaine replied. "How different my life looks now compared to a few months ago." "Regrets?" Stephanie asked carefully. Elaine considered the question seriously. "About the divorce? No, it was the right decision. About how we handled it?" She smiled ruefully. "Let's just say I won't be using psychological warfare involving clowns as my go-to response in future relationship issues." Stephanie laughed. "Fair enough, though you have to admit, it was effective. Too effective," Elaine agreed, "but necessary, maybe, for both of us. Victor needed to see himself clearly, and I needed to see that I could stand up for myself, fight back when I was wronged. And now?" Stephanie nudged her gently. "What do you need now?" Elaine looked out at the garden, then up at the stars again, considering the question. "To remember who I am without him," she said finally. "To rediscover the parts of myself I set aside during the marriage. To build something new." "You will," Stephanie said, with quiet confidence. "You're already doing it." Later that night, alone in the guest house, Elaine sat on the edge of the bed and opened the velvet box again, looking at the key to the country house. Victor's final gift, or perhaps his final penance. Either way, it represented possibility. A chance to reclaim something she had loved, something that had been tainted by betrayal, and make it her own again. She thought about the clown night, about the anger and hurt that had driven her to such an extreme form of revenge. It seemed both justified and excessive now, with the perspective that time and distance provided. Victor had deserved consequences for his actions, but perhaps not the psychological trauma they had inflicted. Still, what was done was done. They had all moved forward from that night, changed in different ways. In the morning, Elaine would call her supervisor at the hospital and request the vacation time she had accumulated over years of dedicated work. She would pack a bag, get in her car, and drive to the country house. Her country house now. She would open all the windows, air out the memories, and begin the process of making it her own again. A retreat, a sanctuary, a place of healing. And after that, the future stretched before her, unwritten. For the first time in decades, the next chapter of her life would be entirely her own creation. There was freedom in that thought, and more than a little excitement. Elaine Montgomery, newly single at 49, was just getting started. As she drifted toward sleep, Elaine found herself smiling at the strange, winding path that had led her here. Victor's betrayal had broken her heart, but in the breaking, she had found pieces of herself long forgotten. In the midst of loss, she had rediscovered her strength, her resilience, her capacity for growth. Perhaps that was the real revenge. Not the night of terror they had orchestrated, but this, emerging from the ashes of her marriage stronger, clearer, more authentically herself than she had been in years. Victor had lost her forever, but in losing him, she had found herself again. It wasn't the ending she had imagined for her marriage. But as Elaine closed her eyes, she realized it might be exactly the beginning she needed for the rest of her life. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And drop a comment below. What city are you watching from? And if your heart tells you to, feel free to leave me a tip on Buy Me a Coffee. Just check the first pinned comment. Thanks for keeping me company and for the coffee, and I'll see you in the next story.